Good morning, everybody. I am going to go ahead and kick this off. I don't want to punish the prompt, as my friend Yvette Steele always says. So we have a chat going, and I am not going to be able to follow much of the chat, at least at the beginning. So Keith, yes, Keith, you can heckle, but just know that as somebody who's already politically active in California, you're on my radar. So remember, paybacks are hell. I want to go ahead and get this started. I know many people are here because the word legislation was placed in front of their face, and a handful of them, I would say, some people panicked, other people said it's about time. And at this site that we have put up, Kara, who works for me, did an amazing job. About, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, I said, hey, I need you to pop up this real quick site. It'll be easy, brain dead, no fancy stuff. Well, then I came back and said, we need a membership module. We need to be able to locate people and search by state or province or country. We need to have forums. It's like one thing after another. So we have this full featured site, which in addition to being very useful, is also very beautiful. So kudos to Kara for doing that. And she deserves a lot of credit for putting up with my whims. But anyway, the site is a place where if you are not familiar with the background of this, I highly encourage you to get started and look at kind of what we've already done. Not that calcifies where we're going or how we're going to get there, but you should have that background. A little housekeeping. It is great to work with IT professionals because I'm not hearing 42 people with their microphones open. And so I appreciate the fact that people mute themselves when they are not talking and not open the mic and forget to close it. This meeting is being recorded. The recording and the chat will be posted up onto the ITSP site. And so if you do not want to be seen or heard or whatever, then you need to either log on anonymously and close your microphone, close your camera or whatever. That's up to you. You got to take care of that. You have been warned. I have asked Kara to put links. If people have links, she's going to be putting some of them into the chat. If you have additional resources that might be useful and should be part of the permanent record, please put those in the chat as well. We also endorse a code of ethics. So one piece of the 9 pillars document that we're going to talk about is about having a code of ethics. And so some of that ethics is, I want to be very transparent about what we're doing. And to be very honest, this is one of these projects where I know it needs to get done, but I can only see so far into the future. So I'm going to be very transparent as we build this. And of course, we want to treat everybody with respect. So you are absolutely welcome to disagree with me. You will be wrong, but no, I'm kidding. But you're welcome to disagree with me. Just be respectful about it. And you know, I don't want this to be a political discussion. But having said that, I really believe that we're at a point where they are coming for us, and we will be legislated upon one way or another. I think we just need to get ourselves a seat at the table. So for those of you who haven't heard of me, my name is Carl Polachuk, and I wrote a bunch of books. I wrote about 20 books for IT service providers, plus a few others. And I would be happy to have you connect with me primarily on LinkedIn, but also Twitter, Facebook, and so forth. And would love to connect with everybody here and continue this conversation online. And don't worry, I only have a handful of slides just to kick us off here. So the site is a place where I would love to have everybody register. And registering just means you want to get on the list so that you know when we have the next meeting and when we start organizing. And that list will not be used for anything else. If you want to join my personal newsletter list, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Joining on this site does not get you that. What it does do is it allows us to begin the process of getting members and saying, look, we have numbers. And the beautiful thing about as an organization that is trying to influence anything is that numbers matter. And so there will always be a free component just so we can point to all those names and say, see, we have, whatever, 10,000 members or whatever it turns out to be. There are some downloads, the 9 Pillars white paper that I wrote as a series of blogs and then sort of retooled into one good sized document is my vision of where our industry is and where we need to go. And there's also a webinar where I presented this. So I have no interest in repeating all of that here today. So if you want to watch the webinar, read the white paper, and then in the webinar, I talked about we need some legislation, we need the next level. And so the proposed legislation is completely amateurish. Yes, I have a background in political science. Yes, I have an English major, but I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legislator, I'm not a lobbyist. So this is just common sense English language and needs to be turned into legislative gobbledygook. The site also has forums where, in particular, I put up one after some of you joined that is, if you want to be a leader, if you want to volunteer to actually lead a local group, a state group, a provincial group, or in the case of the UK or Australia, whether it's a state or start the national organization, we need people to step up. And knowing that being a leader is going to take a little more energy. And, I fully admit I am so busy I can't see straight. So like all of you, I don't have time to dedicate massive amounts of time to this, but I think this is important and I think it needs to be done. I sent a note to somebody online about this, that the way that I look at it is literally that last year, when the state of Louisiana turned their focus and used the term managed service provider and created legislation and defined what that is in law, the way that I look at it, the Borg have entered our quadrant. They know who we are. The state legislators know who we are. They know what we call ourselves. They know what we're doing. On top of that, you have the news media talking about SolarWinds and Kaseya and whatever the latest cybersecurity incident is. And I hope there's nobody here from the media except to say, when I hear these people talking on the radio, they sound like complete idiots. And that's not their fault. It's not what they do for a living. They don't understand why somebody would have such a powerful tool at their fingertips, or why it's valuable to have a single pane of glass, or why it's valuable to run scripts on client computers. It's not what they do. I don't expect them to understand. But what I want to do, one of the things I want to do with this organization and with this site is to develop materials to educate the media on talking points from the MSP's perspective. And so we are, we're looking at providing those services and helping you learn how to talk to the media, how to be the 7-second soundbite the next time there's a major earth-shattering cybersecurity incident that makes all the news. We not only need people to talk about this in an educated fashion, but we need our perspective to be seen. In the 9 Pillars paper, I talk about there are 4 actors in this. There's you, your client, the government, and the insurance companies. And right now, you and your clients have no seat at the table. The government and the insurance companies are deciding how our industry is going to be regulated. And we need to, and I think if there's a natural allyship with the insurance companies, I think we need to partner with them to help all of us. So we need affiliates. We need other organizations. I have registered California Society of IT Service Providers and National Society of IT Service Providers. Both of those point to the same site. And I'm happy to take some role in California, but I need volunteers in every state. We need volunteers in every province in Canada. Right? We need people to sign up to do this. And by this, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm asking you to do, but but we need to learn that together. If you want to find other people in your state, so far, right? Again, part of this depends on how many people have actually signed up and filled out the forms. But if you go to the site, go click on forum and then members, and then search by state. Now, just a fair warning, if you search by country and then search by state, you're not going to get any results. You have to clear the search and then search again. So do a search, clear the search, search again. And lots of people have stepped up. I've gotten emails and notes, and people send me little side notes on LinkedIn and Facebook and whatever. That's all great, but I can't collect all of the tidbits on the internet and put them in a shoebox. I need there to be one place where people actually step up and volunteer. So I ask you, even if you've sent me a note, please go to the site and go to the forum for leadership and say, I step up for, whatever, the great state of Illinois. And that will help us tremendously. Now, if you also see that people are organizing in your state and you say, I also want to help, please, please, please jump in. This is not necessarily a first come, first serve. We're going to try to figure out how to help everybody organize. I have never started an organization this big or this important before. But my last real job was running an organization or helping to run an organization that tracked legislation in the state of California, as well as New York and 2 other states. So, we ran a multi-state operation to track legislation. So I have some idea what that's all about. A few notes on lobbying in the United States. This is a quick link. The NCSL is the National Conference of State Legislators. And they always, they're kind of like CompTIA in the sense that their primary thing that they do is they find the hottest city in America and they meet there in July. Usually CompTIA meets in August, but NCSL, National Conference of State Legislators, has this page with basically a summary of lobbying in their state. The good news is if we're not spending money, if we're not pushing legislation, talking to legislators and spending money, then it's easy to kind of stay under the radar. But at some point, it will cost money. Now, I don't expect us to ever be giving, brown bags full of $100 bills to state legislators. But it does cost money if at some point we say, look, we need to gather people, we need to put together some materials, there's printing costs, there might be some hotel costs or whatever, I don't know. So there'll be some expenses, but anyway, one place to start is to find out what are the basic laws and who in your state can give you more clear information about your state. For Canada, there's actually a lobbying agency for Canada. So you can look at the rules for lobbying there. And again, they point out provincial information that you need to know. So it's a place to start. So today, what I want to try to do is to figure out what we need to do and get your thoughts about organizing at the state and national levels, call for volunteers. In particular, if people have ideas about funding, like right now, we don't have a formal organization. We don't have a corporation. I'm working with Rayanne Buccianico, one of the smartest people I know in the universe, and trying to figure out what kind of organization we need. I thought we should not have a 501c3 since they can't lobby. On the other hand, there is a way to say, look, if you spend less than X percent, you can still be a nonprofit. There are other codes, if we were to incorporate, that are allowed to lobby, but they do not allow tax deductible contributions, right? So anyway, I am learning all of this. But I don't think that we can create one lobbying organization for the entire country or the entire world, which is why we need locals as well. So one question would be, at what point do we figure out if we need to charge people for membership, and how regularly should we meet? In many ways, monthly seems easy. On the other hand, it also seems like not enough. I don't want to overwhelm you. I know you all have businesses to run, and 270 people signed up for this meeting. So I know there's a massive interest. I'm just trying to figure out where we go from here. One thing is to have different groups meet, and anything I can do to help facilitate that, I am willing to do. I will throw open the doors. I ask that people be as respectful as possible with over 100 people on the line here. Basically, what do you think? And I personally would start with the question of, do you think that we should have a paid level of membership early on, or should we wait until we have a certain number of people who are signed up as members? There would always be a free membership, only because we need the numbers. And I would not expect any membership to be expensive at all. But I would much rather see 10,000 people at $100 a piece than to see a very small number at a large, expensive cost.
Carl?
Yes.
This is Larry Mandelberg, Sacramento, California. I think it's very important to have a fee. I agree with at least starting with 2 tiers, 0 and cheap, but I think you have to begin very quickly with some fee. I don't know if $100 is the right number or not, but I think it's very important to start accumulating some money, because when we need to spend money, you want to have a pot of money to go to.
I agree. And a couple of $100, $250 is not unreasonable when you think about the other fees that we pay, in our businesses. At $100, I'm concerned that you don't generate enough money to do what you're going to need to do, because at some point there's going to have to be an attorney involved, and or someone that can get this a little better dialed in so that we can hand it to a legislator and say, here, it's basically done. But
Carl,
you also need the numbers, because a big pile of letters makes a big dent in getting attention.
I have some history in being involved in politics and legislation, as you know, Carl. First of all, it's important to develop the fee, so part of it is offset as a political donation if we're doing that. So the base fee may be X. The political donation, which has to be voluntary, could be a minimum plus more. And I'm willing to help you out because of my connections in legislating at the state and federal level. And also, and I've mentioned another group, I've been writing the criteria for the California State UC and community colleges certification programs. And so I have those. I have the curriculum since I write them. And that would give us a baseline of where the legislators in California has started to adopt a community college certification program, which is part of the, as you know, the legislation. And I'm on the advisory board for those, so I can help you with that.
Very good. Thank you.
It would also make sure that people are serious about being involved too.
Right. Rayanne, you don't have to raise your hand.
I know. I feel like I'm in school. Hi, everybody. So I'm a member on a number of of other organizations, the NAEA and the FSEA and so on and so forth. And so generally, like if you can be a member at the national level, or you could be a member at the state level, and where part of your annual membership fees, goes to your membership at the national level, right? So, so if the state organizations wanted to charge a certain annual membership fee, perhaps a portion of that goes to the national level, because we need a national we need a national stance here in order to get anything done at a national level, right? Somebody in the chat window mentioned that the AICPA owns SOC, right? And they do. And Keith was just talking about, the political, contributions and whatnot. I was speaking to somebody last night about it, and the first thing he suggested was starting a PAC. And so even if we're going to need a political action committee if we're going to get anything done at a political level. Anyway, so just some of my thoughts, and I'm going to open it up for everybody else.
Carl, I want to make a couple of comments again, if I could.
Sure.
First of all, with all due respect to you, Rayanne, I think it's a huge mistake to have state level chapters. I've seen many organizations use that model and they fail desperately. You end up with rogue states who simply refuse to go along with what the national entity wants, and it creates splintering. I don't think that's a wise move. I completely agree that it needs to be national. I also think there needs to be multiple sources of revenue. And in terms of the initial fee, I'm not worried about the cost of lawyers, as in we're going to need $5,000 to get all the legal documents set up. If we don't have $5,000, we got to get $250 to join. I don't buy that. From my perspective, even if it was $10 to join, it would show a commitment and start a pool. There are many, many ways to create income, whether it's a special assessment fee. One of my clients just recently had a need to do something, and they asked the members, do you want to contribute an extra 40% of your dues for 1 year to cover this? I don't think the amount we get is important. I just think it's important that we get started with it, which really leads to my primary point. Carl, you've done, as always, an amazing job of organizing. I will never buy anything you say that demeans what you do or minimizes what you do, because you are absolutely amazing. I feel this organization needs to really be clear about its purpose. I think we need to have a vision statement. I think we need to have a mission statement, and I think we need to have a set of values. You've already started with your ethics as one of the pillars. I think we need to continue to build around your 9 pillars. And as I know you realize, I'm more than happy to help with this stuff. I'll add myself to the list. Thanks.
Thank you.
Carl, this is David Phillips in St. Louis. I want to just reiterate what Larry just said. I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit in talking about specific fees and what the fee structure should be in the state, or the state chapter versus the national organization. I think we need to kind of take a step back and do exactly what Larry was talking about in terms of let's get a steering committee or some sort of, so that we know how we want to move forward as a group prior to discussing all of this. I don't want to say minutia, but getting bogged down in the smaller picture stuff before we have the big picture fleshed out.
Good points all around. One of the things about getting something moving is we're here because I think everybody on this call wants to at least get something moving. And so this is the place to start. One of the things that that I want to kind of come out of this personally is to help us as an industry become more professional. And so the whole mission and vision and values, that I think we need that. And 20 years ago, many people on this call have gray hairs, as I count, almost everybody. 20 years ago, we were an industry of trunk slammers who were, figured out as they went along. And that's not sustainable. And it's also the case on the political side that at some level, we have time to take our time, but at another level, there will be another major cybersecurity incident that makes international news. And when lobbyists and legislators see something like that, they take action, and it's very frequently in response to an event. It is not well thought out. And, you've seen this, pick whatever political topic you want. Their actions would not have prevented the incident that they're responding to. So their actions are very frequently completely inappropriate. On the other hand, if somebody is standing there on the side, ready to hand them a piece of draft legislation, they will start with that. And so I want to take our time. I want to do it the right way, but just also acknowledge there will be additional states who will pass inappropriate legislation this year. It will happen. I don't know if the folks from Termageddon are on this call, but one of the services we subscribe to and help our community members get in part of their storefront is this service called Termageddon that basically it looks at all of the overlapping laws on privacy and compliance in all the states, in all the provinces, in all the countries they can grab, and tries to keep you legal by putting a short code on your website that then links to an updated up to the minute list of these compliances. And, it's a necessary service only because it is impossible to keep up with this. Things are changing too fast. And so again, just to say it, we should go at a deliberate speed, but know that the faster we go, the more likely we are to have a seat at the table.
You're Carl, you're so right on, because in California alone, which is the one I'm most active in, there is legislation being sponsored or written, which is the proper word, by big players who their goal would be to have some minimums that would make it non-cost effective to be a single or 2 or 3 person MSP.
Well, and that's the other thing is the people who have influence are the IBMs and Intels and major monster consulting agencies that have thousands of players. They can afford a $1.7 million lawsuit. They can afford the insurance and they can afford the payout. I doubt if anybody on this call has 1.7 million sitting around with nothing else to do. So, again, the people who have representation also have the money.
And they're players you don't want to see in our scope, the Office Maxes and the copier companies. So we must show some caution there.
A big chunk of them have already proven they can't do the job, and yet
I don't think that matters to legislators.
No, I get it. Yeah, they have the money to steer the ship.
What about working more with the insurance companies instead of trying to go on the political route and using these large insurance companies, and working with them, and then maybe get them to push the things that we want to push. So they see us as partners.
So that's also a piece of the plan is to basically, the proposed legislation that I put out is to work with the insurance companies because they already have a nationwide, statewide, countywide they've got lobbying organizations in place. But they have to be convinced that this is in their long-term best interest. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. At the simplest level, I want to address reducing your liability and your insurance company's liability, so that will reduce rates. But we also clearly, I mean, if you want to make legislators happy, you have to reduce the number of cybersecurity incidents, which means you have to have more clients actually buying these services. And we can't force them to do that, but there might be ways with the insurance companies to, make it more attractive to actually do the things you're supposed to do. One of the things, again, in my membership community, we're having a workshop tomorrow where we basically are asking everybody to dig out your cybersecurity insurance policy and find a page where they've got extras. They've got training for you. They've got links where you can, download materials and so forth. Insurance companies are trying to do something, and it's almost in an HMO way, right? To help you be healthy by providing preventive care. And so we have a lot in common with them on this issue.
If I may,
Sure.
I absolutely agree. I do think, my goal for this here is to have a seat at the table. I think legislation, while it needs to happen, is probably going to be the last in the pieces of the puzzle to fall in line. I think, and we've all spoken about this before, I think the insurance companies, since they're the most affected by it financially and risk-wise, they're going to be the ones to have the teeth that bite. So I'm already working with a number of insurance companies to develop a set of base standards. And I know they'd very much like to be involved in something like this, because at the end of the day, they can afford to offer discounts and set the baseline for their clients that affect their premiums. And the MSPs can be the ones to affect those things. And it's a solution for all that provides benefit for all involved. To the end of, and I agree with you, Carl. We all agree something needs to be done. There's no question about that. I definitely am very eager to see what the goals are, what the stated goals are, what the path to that is. I know a lot of that needs to be resolved. That's the whole point of the meetings and the gatherings. I will add to the point of sponsorships or membership fees. I've said this before in other communities. The vendors are going to be the ones that really pay for this at the end of the day. They're the ones with we're the ones with the bigger pockets. And I'm saying this as a smaller vendor. Yes, the MSPs, and we do this with WISPA, we do this with NANOG, we do this with a ton of other communities. The MSPs, those that are a part of it, should have some kind of free and paid memberships to allow for voting and stuff like that. But I also think the vendors, those of us, need to step up as well. I think there should be a higher cost. Vendors don't hate me. There should be a higher cost vendor membership cost here too, because honestly, we can afford it. And I think that'll get us toward the line a little faster as well.
Well,
I would say, as we're talking about, and this is to Ben and Ann Ray, my mentor Ray, as we talk about insurance companies, remember, we do audits, forensic audits for insurance companies already. Travelers and two other ones already have some vendors that they allow to use for remediation. So those relationships, we're a little bit behind if that's where we want to go. So we have to move forward, because they are creating business relationships, not technical relationships. Alex and Ray know what I'm talking about there. That they are doing business with for remediation with providers that knew how to grease the palm and get in the door, and we're overseeing it. And personally, I wouldn't let them touch my cell phone, but that's a different subject. So if we want to start an insurance relationship, we better start moving on it now.
And I was thinking, like, from the technical perspective, right, that we could help the insurers draft up things, because we just went with Lloyd's of London for one of our clients, and they were like, oh, everything has to be multi-factor. I was like, okay, I get it. And then they were like, no, everything. I'm like, well, what do you mean everything? Like, you mean every time they open a file? Like, they didn't even define it clearly. And I was like, well, this is great. So it's not really clearly defined. And yet, if my client has a breach, they'll be like, well, you didn't have an MFA on opening this folder inside this share inside OneDrive. And so therefore, you didn't qualify for the insurance. So,
But I think that's where Carl's right on.
yeah,
I'm not politically correct. Insurance companies don't view MSPs as a solution right now. They view us as part of the problem because we're disjointed, because we have trunk slammers, because we have a lot of people in this business that have no formal training. And I'm not saying that makes you better. I'm saying that's what people in suits understand. And if Carl's organization or our organization shows a list of standards, checklists, procedures, SOPs that we live up to, we could suddenly approach insurance companies as no longer the cause of breaches, but a solution to breaches.
right.
Carl, I have something. I'm Ray. I want to piggyback a little bit off of what you said in working with insurance companies and things. I've been pounding on that door for about 5.5 years. And everything, because I felt a long time ago that the insurance companies were going to be a very hard part of this picture. And the thing is what I'm coming across is they just don't know what they don't know. And again, a lot of these insurance companies, they're used to handling the PNC and things like that. But even on the commercial side, they're not used to handling this technology aspect that we have today. And so I'm actually getting calls of, can you teach me this? Do you have this? The checklist. I mean, Hartford has a checklist, and trying to get that and putting together a training for them and show me, luncheons and things like that to show them, hey, this is our world. We're here to help you, because not only are we here to protect the asset, which is the business, the client's business, from something happening, but when it does, like a car accident, we're here to get them through this as well as you're there for them. So that's how I've been able to kind of massage that. But, I think too, it comes down to not only us as MSPs, but also the insurance companies, because once this starts to fall, and I know we're seeing this repercussions of SolarWinds and Kaseya, this whole nut has actually started phone calls filtering to me because of the relationships I have. But again, I tend to agree that a lot of times with the insurance companies, they don't know what they don't know. So yeah, they have that stop out, that handout going, wait a minute. But when you start smoothing it over and putting it in their terms of a car or something, then they're opening going, oh, wow. And this is not, I tell them, technology today has come so far into the forefront. I hate to say it, the pandemic just kicked that door wide open. And I think that's part of it. And I think that if we could get some of the insurance companies to be here to listen, we might be able to get a good partnership. And like you say, they have some teeth that they can bite into this.
So the groups I'm speaking with are represented by Lloyd's, are represented by Hartford. They have varying, so there's 3 aspects they're looking at. There's initial attestation, right? I say I have this, I say I have this. They have varying degrees of questionnaires. And we've seen this with PCI compliance. We've seen this with everything else. It's like 3.5 to 20 pages, depending on the underwriter. Then they have the ongoing audits. This is the piece they're missing. A lot of them are not doing audits at all, but they intend to in the beginning of 2022. And then the third piece is incident response. Most of the cybersecurity providers are very clear in that if something happens, you can only use their IR firms. What I'm concerned with is, I agree with you, it's awareness and understanding of what's going on. A lot of them don't know, and a lot of them are just throwing spaghetti at the wall. The reason I'm so concerned with having a seat at the table and being able to engage in the conversation is because I'm terrified that they're going to say, okay, everybody needs to be ISO 27001. Everybody needs to be CMMC. And they're just going to say, this is some kind of classification that we know says something about security. Now you have to do it too, without any understanding what the ramifications are. And that's why a lot of them,
when people have mentioned specific solutions online, I've tried to steer the conversation to, I don't think we want to put that like CMMC. We don't want that in the legislation, because NIST could just, say, hey, you know what, we're going to put that to sleep in 2 years and replace it with something else. That's where what the accounting business calls generally acceptable accounting.
Right, gaps. Yeah.
We rely on some organization to say, we recognize these as approved trainings, approved practices, and so forth. And one current example is CMMC, but it's not the only. The other thing, Ray, from your perspective, there are a lot of people who are IT service providers who are not managed service providers.
Right.
They go in and put in phone systems. That's it. They don't offer backup and disaster recovery, and they should not be held liable simply because they touched the equipment. And so, there are people who.
Wait a second, Carl. Of course they should be. Of course they should be. I'm not kidding. How many times has a thing been introduced by a company that does HVAC, like the Target attack? If you're going to touch the network, you have to be compliant for it.
No. I agree with that. I'm just saying that in terms of if there's a cyber attack and you can't get them back in business the next day, I don't think you go after the phone company, and I don't think you go after the guy who only came in and installed a monitor. The managed service provider should be the one doing vendor management and making sure that entire picture is taken care of. So there's kind of like, there are people who are not going to be liable. There are people who are should be held liable, but are not being held accountable. And then there are people who do this half-assed and they don't want to be held accountable. And those are the people that we need to move out of this business. Let them have the liability.
That's what I think is one of the chief priorities that need to be established up front. The categorization of the types of service providers. I'm not talking about who's liable, who's not liable, but we've talked about this 1,000 times. You take two MSPs, put them in a room, they can't decide what color the sky is. But if you look at the national electrical contractor codes, they're very, very, very clear as to who does this, who does that. I think we need to establish a baseline of this is what's qualified as an MSP. This is what's qualified. I'm not trying to be derogatory toward anybody or their business model. That's not the point. But I think there needs to be a clear definition of what an MSP is. Because I'm going back to the group of 50 or so insurance providers I'm working with, but they're getting to the point of saying, we are going to certify MSPs, have them go according to a certain baseline by the end of 2022. And if you're not on this approved list, we will not provide you cybersecurity insurance or any kind of policy unless you're using these firms. I don't want it to get to that. I think that's very dangerous for our industry. But if we don't qualify ourselves, somebody else will.
And you have to define what back-end operational is. And that's where a lot of MSPs get it wrong. They think making all the computers work is a failover program. It's not. So you start defining that. The backup systems that allow a company to continue functioning.
Right.
I think Rayanne's stating it right in the chat. That initial outline of the committees that need to be established, I think, is a great starting point. I would start with some committee starting with what is going to be our meeting cadence for the year, for the remainder of the year. One other one for determining how we establish voting protocols and the establishments of those committees. Another one to talk about qualification categorization of MSPs. But I think those working groups should be the first point of order.
So on the forums, if you are interested in being in a working group, put a note in there for that as well. Whether you want to be a leader at some level or be on a working group. We'll do what we can. What do you all think about? Is monthly enough? Clearly we want to get some leaders to get together as quickly as possible, but
Carl, I was afraid this was going to happen. We've done really good for 45 minutes, but now I feel like there's 10 people who really have something they want to say. And I'm sorry for this, but one of the things, there's just a couple of quick things. I have a lot of ideas and I don't know where to put them down. I don't know if they're going to be captured out of this chat session. I don't know if I need to go to the website where you have the volunteers. I don't know if you want an email. You need to let us know where you want all these ideas. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I do think the right way to start is to find a group of people who will be the governing body. I'm thinking of this from a governance perspective. So I'm thinking of a board, and I'm thinking in the 9 to 13 member range. And the board can then do all kinds of things. From a committee perspective, one of the committees that often gets missed is what I call an issue management team. So that any issues that come to the organization don't go to any committee or the board until the issue management team reviews it, and their job is to review it and make sure it's relevant for the organization, and then send it with the proper background to the group that it belongs to. And the last thing I wanted to say is, I think most of the people on this call are MSPs. I don't know that. I am not an MSP. I'm not even an IT guy anymore, as you know, Carl. I was in it for 40 plus years, but I'm not active in it anymore. But I'm here because the name of this, Society of IT Service Providers, are you intending for this to be exclusively for managed service providers or any IT service provider?
Well, any, because part of, at least from my perspective, part of my goal is to say, look, there are people who we need to have a way for people to get into this industry, grow up, become more professional, and with luck, they'll become what we currently call managed service providers. But there's a lot of people in this industry that they don't want to offer managed services. They don't want to offer a flat fee. They don't want to have subscriptions, but they want to provide tech support. And,
and they are poor people.
Well, but there's a lot of people who are hardware focused or whatever, and they're very, very successful. But what they do is not what we would call managed services. They're part of this industry, and they can be very professional and very profitable. So managed service providers have been kind of my focus for 20 years, but they're not the only people in the industry.
Hey, Carl, it's Jason from North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And I just had a couple of different things I wanted to share. One thing is focus on building membership, right? I think that's going to be the big thing, because the magic's going to be in the numbers. Secondly, I think I mentioned this to you in an email that we were exchanging earlier in the week. Department of Insurance for each state. That's central to everything we're talking about here. Legislative, all the insurance companies have to go through that channel. So it's almost like a single point of attack per state. So instead of working with 50 different insurance companies plus, right, we only have maybe 50 different entities to work with to at least start the channel. And those Department of Insurance is mostly focused on consumer fairness and insurance. That's kind of their main goal. And I think that kind of plays into some of what we're talking about today.
Right. So the question keeps coming up, where to put, where to volunteer. I think the site, the nsitsp.org, is the place to go, because it's one central location. And, again, if people can volunteer there, it allows us to have just one place to start looking at stuff and organizing. And I would, take all comers. Tim Golden, yes, sir. You have your hand?
Hey, I have to find the unmute button. Hey, thanks for taking my time, and thanks for putting this all together. There's been a lot of talk of committees and cadence and all kinds of great stuff, and where and how. You keep pushing the website, which I think is amazing. I think you should start a separate forum just for the committee and board discussion, as outside of the, hey, I want to volunteer, right? So I see that we can't start our own threads or our own initial discussions in the forum. So it would be great if there was a topic dedicated to just committee and board building, as opposed to, I want to volunteer for my state. So just a, sort of housekeeping organization piece. Thanks. Tim Golden.
Yeah, good. Part of what we wanted to do is sort of get something started and then say, okay, we don't want this to turn into Reddit with 1,000 links that have one comment.
Totally agreed.
So, these things always have to start at the top down, but then you have to grow them from the bottom up. So, and I, like I said, this is my first time trying to start something from scratch of this nature. So, so that is something that we will absolutely do. And so shall we meet again like this in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month?
Gotta have it in a week. You can't make any progress on a monthly schedule. I know this from experience.
Yeah,
I'm
this
a co-founder of the 20, and the 20 is interested in this. I don't speak for the 20. I speak for my MSP Boulder Designs right now, but there are other fellow members on this call as well. You have to get the cadence going to get it off the ground and get it joined. And I have the ears of a huge number of MSPs out there, mostly within the 20. Which, if you wanted a physical meetup, end of September is the 20s, annual event down in Dallas. Pretty well attended, very high, powerful, and established companies. I've been in business 35 years before, and was being an MSP before the term was invented.
Yeah, this early in the ball game, I'd say weekly to get traction.
One last thing I threw out in the chat, people are trying to say where to measure where you are. I built a scoring card called businesssecurity.score.com. I've already got insurance companies using that to evaluate where somebody is. It was built on a lot of the other models, just puts the number on, gives you a number where your cybersecurity score is. So you know what you need to improve, and what are the low-hanging fruit to improve the score.
Carl,
In the chat.
real quick, if you don't mind, I did start a thread for working group ideas. I put the link in the chat for people to start adding there what they think their groups could be. I wanted to ask your permission first on another thread to maybe, since Rayanne has done such an amazing job of taking notes on this stuff, thank you for the forethought on that. Would it be okay to start another thread with the meeting notes from each meeting, or are you not comfortable with that being public yet?
I'm totally fine with it. I mean, like from my perspective, I want transparency in this, right? I mean, clearly I kicked it off, and my company has, made a significant investment so far, but I don't want to own this. This is not my retirement plan. I have no interest in, being the whatever. But I think it's important, and I think it needs to get done.
I would say for next week's meeting, someone's asking what we should have for an agenda: form committees, form state groups, and Six Sigma the strategies. And that would be a full meeting, and that would get us off and running and allow us to disperse into groups that'll be more productive and reporting back to the whole.
All right.
If I may ask a question, Carl?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tony. I'm a CPA in Vancouver, Canada. It's really not much of a question. It's really for clarification and kind of discussion. So the way I understand it is we are reactive to legislature coming to our industry. The response is to professionalize, which I could totally understand. I support that. When I first heard of this group, I perceive it as being pro-legislation, which is we are coming up with our own draft legislation, going to the legislator and have every state legislate. But now hearing this, I think maybe that's not the intent. The intent is to first professionalize. So we're getting ready in case of state or provincial legislator coming to us and saying we need to legislate you. The reason why I'm thinking about this is because I think a lot of people that I met in the Facebook group and other places are not supporting legislation. They want the freedom of having an unregulated industry. I also know the fact that's not possibly the case because now they're coming for us. So I want to emphasize maybe the first priority is to quickly organize into a professional group, set standards, and then whether the legislator is coming to us to regulate us or not, we're working with them, but we're not proactively trying to regulate our own industry, because I'm a CPA. I understand regulation means less freedom, and legislation also means that there's always somebody watching over our shoulders.
Well,
And
I think there needs to be somebody watching over our shoulders. That's kind of the problem. The freedom that we have is the biggest problem that we have today. This isn't a hobby for a lot of folks. This puts people out of business when we fuck it up. Pardon my French. But this is important. And the group that's saying, I don't want to be regulated, I'm concerned, and I don't have anything to back it up with, is the group that we have to be worried about bringing down the house for the rest of us.
I don't understand.
And sorry to be the one that has to say the hard thing, but I think that's the hard thing.
That's the hard thing. Yeah.
Completely agree.
Well,
Yeah.
the part that I'm wondering is about is
Absolutely agree.
I want to emphasize that the first priority is to organize us professionally to bring our standards up, right? And the regulation is hopefully going to be the part that follows, right?
So Tony, I completely agree with you. And, again, I don't know if everybody on this call has read the 9 pillars document.
Not with anything.
Yeah.
Had over 1,000 people
Using.
download that, but I don't know how many
Yeah.
people have read it. But just a second, let me just here. But part of what I did in there is I said, look, we need education, we need standards, we need a way for people to get into this business and mature up, right? I mean, those are the elements of professionalism. And part of it is also, I mean, I started that document by saying, as what Alex was referring to, we've had a lot of people who have not been responsible in this industry. They come in, they do a job in a half-assed manner, and they take the money and they run. And even if you have never had any cybersecurity incidents, you live in a profession where that person lives, where that person behaves. And, then you have to go back out and try to find new clients. And they have this vision that, all these IT service providers are just going to, hand you a 3-tiered price list, take your money, not do the work, right? We have bad actors, and it is in everyone's professional interest to have them be set aside and basically recognized for not being the professionals that the rest of us want to be.
I'd just like to say I have to cut for another meeting, but I'm happy to help in any way that I can. But I've heard more than once and read more than once, and I'm going to say dozens of times, people say, if I screw it up and get sued, I'm just going to close my business. I don't have anything they could get me for anyway. I don't really care that much. And that's what we have to grow this group out of. That's what we have to grow this industry out of. One where a trunk slammer can say, I'll just flee the country. I'll just close up and roll out, right? And they can't do anything to me.
Right.
That attitude has to go away, and we have to be the method. This has to be the method for fixing that.
Alex,
Carl, just to
wanna
shift it
piggyback
just a
off
little
you
bit here. Just to
Alex,
shift it a little bit, Carl, what you're doing is you're starting a small business, and we need to realize that. And what this will be a nonprofit business, but it's a small business. It has to be profitable. Eventually, it's going to have staff. Eventually, it's going to have permanently dedicated people. And we need to have some people that can put seed money in to get this started. I mean, you need to figure out what your number is, whether it's 10K or 20K, whatever the number is that we can get founding partners in. And I think MSPs need to step forward and say, I'm willing to be a founding partner. I want to vote on the board to be able to make these things happen. And I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. And that will give you the seed money to do everything else that you want to do.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the early committees is going to be how do we fund this committee? So somebody else was talking.
Yeah, I was going to say, Alex, I know you're kind of passionate, and I agree with you. I think this last ransomware, I mean, when I first heard about it on July 2nd, and MSP was just thrown right out there. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And here comes another black mark. We got the first black mark about a month ago. Now we got another one. And there's people who have asked me, Lisa, you say you're an MSP and I have to it's like, I feel almost have to be on a defense. Yes, if we step forward as a group first before these legislators and say, hey, we're taking upon us, because I hate to say it, what happened before, on July 2nd, it came through a major vendor and then it filtered out, and it ends up falling on what we call the little guys, us. And I agree with that. And I think if we step up and say, okay, this is what we're trying to do, and we're trying to say, if this happens, this is how we can go about it. I agree. And I think too, we need to make sure that on the board and on the committees that there's full inclusion. And what I mean by that is, I think Ray had mentioned it before. We might have MSPs that are, 1, 2, 3-man shops, and we're also fighting off the big boys like Dell and Xerox and Office Depot, Office Max. I think there needs to be a big, I say a good range, because us small guys, and I say that, us small guys, we're out here because we care and we want to be a part of it. But there's a lot of times us small guys get pushed to the side. And that's why, that's why I think that we need to have the full inclusion, but also I think this is a great idea because we're coming forward first before we're told.
Well, inclusion is built into being a pack. If we're going to be a pack of any sort, inclusion is dictated because we can't be exclusive and be a pack. So that's kind of dictated there. If you've ever formed a pack. So those requirements are a little stringent, but make us a little more acceptable to the legislators. And just as we're thinking, remember the legislative attitude now. Carl said, don't get political. I never listen. I'm not good at obeying. Just the political climate right now is to legislate to fix things. And so any standalone is not in the climate nationally or in many states. So we need to be aware of that, I think.
Yes, sir. Well, legislators legislate. It's their job. So we are basically out of time. James, did you have one more point you wanted to make?
Yeah, I was going to add to Alex's point. Not only is it the bad IT actors who honestly truly believe they can put together a Hyper-V cluster just because they can level the World of Warcraft character up to 100 in a weekend. It's not just those guys we have to worry about. It's also the customers who honestly don't care. I am managing over a dozen Windows Server 2003 machines right now because the customers will never upgrade. They honestly don't want to put the money towards it. They want to put the effort towards it. I've got a better chance of shaving off Keith Nelson's beard through the monitor than I do getting him off Windows Server 2003. So there's a whole slew of customers out there that are also going to hurt us. These are the guys that are going to get hacked. They're not going to spend money on backups. They're not going to spend money on cybersecurity. They're not going to see the need in it until they do get hacked. And we're going to have to deal with not only the bad IT actors, but also the bad customers who are not going to. It was the 10th rule in Microsoft's list of rules. No one thinks anything bad can happen to them until it does.
Right. Well, and a piece of the proposal so far was about, if you offer them the appropriate services and they turn you down, you can be relieved of liability. And that's the part where the state has to get involved, because you can make a deal with a client and have them sign a piece of paper, but that will have no effect whatsoever when their insurance company sues your insurance company.
But that doesn't solve the PR problem of this, though. Like, at some
Right.
point or another, we just have to stop servicing customers that are shitty customers. And until we're willing to do that, we're always going to have customers that are going to shop around for the cheapest option that is going to drag all the rest of us down.
Oh, yeah. And unfortunately, there will always be somebody there to service the shitty customer.
Right.
Somebody will always want to take and be that lowest priced Kmart vendor.
Right. And
MSP.
remember, Nancy Reagan answered this decades ago. Just say no. There's your answer. Just say no.
Well, yeah, but legal weed. I mean, I don't want to go off in the weeds here, but legal weed didn't make underground weed go away.
Not at all, especially in California.
Right.
Yeah, but do we off on a conversation, Eric, which we could probably put on the agenda later. Do we care if a non-member MSP is one of them that is held liable? I think that shows our members don't do this. That's why our little seal of approval has value.
So I would like to go ahead and put this to sleep, just so we can, not go too far off in the weeds, and we'll come back next week. And one of these discussions can be a thread on the forums. And if you have ideas, send me an email. I think the email of concierge at Small Biz Thoughts is also on that site. That goes to my team. So we want to be responsive. We want to help move this forward. Stay tuned, and I will try to get together another meeting. Unless somebody has objections, I'll probably do same time, same station. So very good. Thank you all for being here. Sorry to cut it off, but I do want to respect people's time, and I also want to be able to try to put this into as manageable of chunks as possible.
Thank you, Carl, for doing all this. This is fantastic.
Well,
thanks, Carl.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you all.
How do I, here we go.